I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Governing Board. The time is 7:04. Let the record show all members are present. And let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. So the motion carries 5-0. All right, so we'll start with Governing Board reports. Ms. Tweedy. Oh,
No.
I'm sorry. So I need a motion for the resolution. Oh, resolution item 2D.
I move that the governing board approve to alter the regular governing board meeting date from February 27th, 2018 to February 28th, 2018.
Do you have a question, Mrs. Ordway? We sort of flip-flopped it.
Yeah,
we
I was-
adopted the
oh, okay.
agenda. This is my mistake.
Not a problem. I know I have no more questions.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We're doing a little time traveling. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to Governing Board reports. Ms. Tweedy?
No report.
Mrs. Fisher?
I want to thank all the schools who allowed me to come and visit them. There was quite a few, so I'm not going to name them all, but they know who they are. Some of them are here. I had wonderful visits with 6 different campuses. Was able to see everything from the most fabulous high school art class, which I did send Dr. Finch in a request to reactivate an old, I guess the district used to have an art show for staff, and it went away back in like 2006 or 7, something like that. And I just think it would be a cool thing to revive and possibly have it open to all staff, just to kind of get everybody showing off their art, whatever it is, even if it's a stick figure out of twigs. I think it'd be cool. All the way down to, well, I guess it would be up to New River, where I spent a lot of time with kindergartners, and I got to engage with crayons and things that I don't generally do in a high school district. And I have to say it was just a magical couple of days spending time with kids. It reminds you of why you put up with whatever tough decisions have to be made, or somebody being mad at you because you made something in one direction or the other. Our kids are it. They're the real reason for everything. So that's pretty much it. I just want to thank them for letting me come and visit and play.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Mrs. O'Brien?
Thank you. It has been a busy week. I'd like to thank Deb Rotes. I got to visit Anthem School on their field day, and it was, I don't know if field days are this way across Deer Valley, but their 8th graders plan and run the field day for the younger kiddos, which I thought was really an awesome way to do that. Got to attend an exciting conversations with Kurt as well, where we had lots of community members talk about a variety of topics. And then we're at the ASU Wells Fargo Arena twice, once last week and once yesterday. Go Deer Valley Skyhawks. The boys played their heart out. It was a great game, and it was really awesome to see all the community members, and I mean our Deer Valley community members, as well as, you know, students and staff, but a lot of administration was there. So that was a lot of fun to be a part of. I also had the opportunity to visit with or go to the regional spelling bee where we had, I believe it was 8 or 9 of our Deer Valley students. Those kiddos, they hang in there. They only miss one. Only 1 or 2 were dropping out. I had to finally leave at 11:45, and I still think there were more than half the kiddos there. So I don't know how late they were there, but it was quite a spelling show. And then I also went to the legislative update with A for Arizona. They have a large charter school, I think, membership. There were 3 school districts, actually. I want to say like not Holbrook, the other way, Eager, Overguard area, and then Nogales. And I just think it's another place where we might want to think about having a seat at the table. There's a lot of discussion about the legislation and how it impacts charter schools and some districts. There was quite a bit of discussion actually about the A through F grading system and the impact on the schools who are already proficient, already have a lot of students that are highly proficient, so they don't have the growth that maybe some of other school districts. So it was a very informative meeting. And keep up the hard work. We're approaching spring fever, although it doesn't feel like it outside. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. Mrs. Ordway.
I did want to do something a little bit serious. I wanted to recognize the tragedy that we have as a country, but certainly as people involved in public schools share the sorrow that our fellow students, staff, and employees suffered through last 9 days ago in Florida. I have had the opportunity, it started off as just an email to each of the board members to let them know that we all stand in solidarity with them, never expecting an email back. But they've each emailed back 1 or 2 times and have told me that as they go through today and the next couple of weeks, they would be more than happy to let us know what our district will be able to do for them, student to student, adult to adult. Because I think in these tragedies, it certainly is horrible for the students, but I don't ever want to forget that our staff are affected possibly twice because they have students of their own and because they are inside the school. So for all of you guys that staff schools, we're behind you. And I think that possibly making sure that our public knows that safety is number one truly is not just something we say. It's something that we work on every day as things happen. Moving on from there, I've had quite a few school visits, anywhere from a K-6 through middle school and then up to high school. I got to interview students at New River for their junior achievement jobs in Junior Biztown. And Ms. Fisher, they told me all about your visit. They were so happy that we had board members there. And Dr. Finch, they do now supply you with Mountain Dew since you've made such a few trips up there. So the Student Summit was unbelievable. I think Ms. Frank is going to want to go into that in more detail. But again, amazed by what our students do for each other as the adults stand back and let them put into motion all the things that we've been teaching them. Basketball playoffs, I'm telling you, I wanted to close my eyes and not watch the end of that game and watch the rerun. But the tenacity and the grit that that team has was something that, mirrors how they conduct themselves throughout the rest of what they do. Honor band concerts were unbelievable. I went to the Goldwater, which I think was called the Gold Region, the Boulder Creek region. It was 6th grade bands from the district playing for the first time together. They practice all day long, and they put on such a exciting and professional concert. It's amazing. Legislators, that stuff is all around. I know that I'm not the only one that has been contacting them with common sense to certain, or realities to what they're suggesting that they might want to impose on us, letting them know really how it would work if it happened. And last but not least, calling all fairy godmothers is now open. Our high school will be collecting dresses and also clothes for our young men. That's something that I do every year to make sure that we have that we don't have anything that prevents them from going other than maybe being shy. So I have an opportunity to house my stuff at Goldwater. And I have middle school now will help me get it all separated and out. But if you have a prom dress, Scott Smith, I don't know if you have a collection or any suits, ties, shoes, jewelry, whatever, just send it to your closest high school or let me know where it is and I'll come get it. And I know that was a lot of stuff, but I appreciate all of you, and I want you to know that as a board member, I am just so proud to serve for this district. There it is.
Thank you, Mrs. Ordway. Well, I had the pleasure last week of attending the Superintendent Student Advisory Council Environmental Summit. That's a long title. And it was really a great day. It was so well organized. So special thanks to Dr. Finch, to Sheila Taylor and Dorothy. They did a great job. The students were awesome. So it was really, really a great day. And if you have a chance, I see they've got their tree over there with the leaves the students put on it with, I think it was commitments they were going to make to help improve the environment. So it was a really exciting day, which was followed up the next day by another exciting day at Gavilan Peak's I Love Science Day. So I had the opportunity to attend that and to see all the students with their science projects as it started to rain. You know, they were outside. And I did, I think, 10 30-minute presentations, 350 students in one day. So I was kind of tired by the end of that day. But that was really exciting to see the emphasis on STEM and science and the excitement of the students. And then yesterday, I had the pleasure of hosting a Chief Science Officer cabinet meeting down at my regular day job, and was pleased to see the number of Deer Valley schools and Chief Science Officers from Sierra Verde, O'Connor, Sonoran Foothills. I'm probably forgetting someone, but it was great to see the Deer Valley students there, and several of my coworkers who assisted with that. One of them came up to me today and said, "I feel so much better about the future, having met those students." And they were smarter than me. And I was like, yeah, I understand that feeling. So a lot of exciting things going on. And so I'll wrap up my report and turn it over to Dr. Finch.
Hey, I have a lot as well. I also too want to thank Ms. Frank for helping out on the environmental summit. That was a big deal. She was one of the featured speakers, did a great job. We had our executive council meeting today, and they talked about how great job you did. So thanks again for helping us out. And that's a big deal for a board member to jump in and help out and be one of our content experts, especially on the environment, which is such a broad topic. So thanks. Also want to thank the board for scheduling the meeting for tonight versus last night, so we get a chance to zoom over to the arena. And as far as we know, that's never been done. So first time for everything. It was a good choice. We were, down by 1.5, 2-point game with 4 minutes left, so it was close. And yes, my heart skipped a beat myself. But an exciting game, in the school represented themselves well, and the student body section was very appropriate, so that was a plus. So thanks to those kids as well. We just had our advanced ed visit today, or last 3 days, and just met with the final evaluation, more of a verbal one. The actual report will be coming in about 45 days. So they did a bunch of interviews, and obviously interviewed the board and teachers and staff and students, and looked at our system. So we're interested in what they found. So we'll know in the next 30 to 45 days, and that'll be coming. As Ms. Ordway mentioned, safety's issue, and has been brought to the forefront in the last week and a half. And obviously, a lot of the community meetings that I have, conversations with Kurt, those are always the first questions that are asked. So we're on putting a lot more concentrated effort on communication with our principals, and checking in with them, and obviously responding quickly to any issues that are popping up in the next. And we have a request from the high school principals to send out a document that'll give some guidelines. So we're working on that, and hopefully in the next 48 hours we'll be giving them that kind of a guideline on what to do in certain situations. So we're working on that as well, something that can kind of design where they want to go next. Obviously, the best defense in any system is if you see something, say something, and that hasn't changed. And so we need our community partners, our families, as we work with law enforcement to be eyes and ears for us, and that's how we are effective as a team. And most of the incidents in the past 10 years have all been disenfranchised male youth from 13 to 21. So we need to have our eyeballs peeled for those types of students and get them the help that they need. So if you see something, say something. And last, our governor, I think I've put you in an email. Our governor will be visiting us. He's chose Deer Valley to come visit during Read Across America, so that's pretty exciting. So he'll be reading to a class in the next couple days when Read Across America comes to fruition, and we're excited to have the governor to choose Deer Valley Schools. So I'll give you an update too as that finishes up, and I'm sure it'll be in the media. That's it.
Okay, so that moves us on to item 3C, Mr. Miglerino, Fiscal and Business Services Report.
Good evening, President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch. Just a little disclosure here. I'm fighting a pretty bad head cold, so I know that Dr. Galligan was looking for a little more separation from me, but please bear with me as I try and work through this report.
Dr. Galgan, you have permission to move down a seat.
It helps if I don't try and laugh, because that turns into a cough, so I'll do my best here. We are pleased to share the report from the Budget Committee, and I think it's important to note that we, at the request of the Governing Board, we reinstated the Budget Committee, or established it. We couldn't find when it was last actually put into place. So this was something new as we're working on the development of the 2018-19 budget. We did learn a great deal from this experience. And we already have some ways of making some improvements as we consider this for future years' budget developments. But the charge initially, as we've stated all along, was for the committee to develop a recommendation of the budget priorities. And so this isn't a specific how to spend money per se. It's like, what are the things that are important to our community? And the Budget Committee, I believe the intention was to make sure that we had a further outreach to get that input from not only internal stakeholders, but also some of our parents and community members as well. And to that end, I know this is hard to read. I wanted to give them recognition. This was the list of the committee members. I know I saw at least one of them here. There may be others that are in the audience. I wanted to thank them for their commitment of time. This committee started to meet in November. I met in November, December, January, excuse me, and in February to develop this, the recommendation that we're going to share with you this evening. I will tell you that although this is the list, and we did some of our communication electronically, there was a core group of individuals that actually helped us. That was about somewhere in the neighborhood about 12 to 15 of the committee members that I think had perfect attendance. In addition to the actual meetings themselves, they were live streamed, so some of the members that couldn't make it could watch it live remotely and or watch it afterwards because they are still posted. This is kind of the timeline that we shared with you in terms of the meetings, and we have basically completed all of these along the timeline with the exception of the negotiated solutions team at the end of that timeline, still working on developing salary and benefit recommendation as an additional component. One of the key components that I wanted to point out was the community-wide electronic feedback, and we'll share some of the results of that this evening that helped us develop the recommendation. So due to an, excuse me, I apologize. One of the exercises that the committee worked on was developing a list of priorities that were part of the survey. It was a forced ranking survey. These were the items, and they were in no particular order as they showed up on the actual survey. They were randomized to help make sure there wasn't any propensity to just pick the first one on the list. And although there's been some previous discussions about this list, I think one of the things that also was a requirement that the governing board gave to us was that there would also be a narrative answer as part of the survey. And so we were able to glean a lot of information from the narrative, even if there are some concerns from others related to the actual forced ranking survey items that they listed, or that we listed for them. So we got good participation. I think I was shooting for somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,700 responses is what I mentioned at one point in time. We ended up with 3,225 responses. The vast majority of those are from parents, but a good representation from our employee groups as well. Just over 1,000 of those responses are from our staff. And then a little underrepresented were our community members, but this was, I must confess, self-reported, and we do have some people that serve in dual roles. You can be a parent as well as an employee of the district as well. This slide here just shows the results. It's a heat map for the forced ranking. And so the best way to read this is green means that there was an overwhelming support for that item. So you can see provide a salary increase, which is second from the right, scored a 5.46 out of 7. 1,683 respondents had it as their very number one response. Close behind in second place, provide additional instruction time for students, especially students in need of academic help, at 5.02. 744 people scored that a forced ranking of 1. Also worth noting, the option that was provide differentiated pay for teachers based on student achievement results was the lowest score, or had a lowest forced ranking score of 947 people chose that as their lowest ranking. So you can see that's green as well. So it's important to see the top as well as the bottom. And I don't know that there was any, I'll say, aha moments from the forced rankings, but you can see the results here as well as how it broke down by employee group. And there was really a consistency that the top two items in there were provide a salary increase that was uniform for all employees and additional instruction time for students that are needing support. From this information, and I wanted to give recognition to Dr. Smith and his team. They helped us mine some of this data with some of the tools that they use to be able to pull out information specifically. And I'm talking about, from the narrative response. And the number one word that was found was the word teacher, followed closely behind with teacher and or the word pay, salary, or raise. So there was a predominant reflection of that in the actual survey. I just wanted to point out, and don't want to dwell on it, I wanted to get some feedback from folks about the actual survey itself, and maybe any reflections. So we were looking for words that would pop out. So at the very low end of the scale, you'll see some words that we were trying to make sure that there wasn't some additional information that we could glean from maybe doing this in a future survey. So you see the word waste or survey itself. Those types of words are shown there. We did break out, in the pie chart there, just to give you an idea. We were able to look at not only the 465 responses for teacher with the word pay, raise, or salary involved, but we could look at it by employee group, and it really followed the same pattern as the response rate for each employee group. But that's looking at it specifically with those keywords in mind. This slide just has that same data in a table form. So without further ado, here is the recommendation from the Budget Committee. I will say that I did offer to the Budget Committee that if there that we weren't trying to reach consensus, that if there would be a dissenting opinion, I would be more than happy to provide that. I did not receive a dissenting opinion from any of the committee members. So this recommendation is for a meaningful salary increase for all employees, and they felt it was important to quantify that to be, somewhere between 2 to 4%. The additional considerations, as I mentioned previously, predominant feedback that teacher salary increases are supported. And there was also a notation that due to the minimum wage requirement and it increasing, that classified salary compression or differentiated salary increases, especially when it comes to some of the classified group employees, was something that needs to be addressed. Second on the list, and I will say that these, although they're not listed in like a numeric order, I think there is some importance to the way that we wrote this up, that we would support, the committee would support providing additional instructional time for students in need of academic help. And again, this wasn't intended to be prescriptive to be able to determine how to figure that out. It's just that that we would direct additional resources to make that happen. And then it was important that that the committee identify that there were efficiencies that were suggested, especially in some of the narrative comments, that needed to be vetted more. And one of those is kind of a holdover from the core values that we used previously. It should be noted that those core values helped us through a lot of the budget reductions that we had to implement over the last, I'll say, 9 years. But maintaining student-teacher ratios shall be a priority. They felt that was important, especially from due to that we operate in a competitive environment with other options for parents to choose. Evaluating employee training schedules and professional development schedules and those related expenses, another efficiency that was identified. And then consider magnet schools or some other way to attract students into underutilized campuses, are just an idea, just a sampling of some of the efficiencies that the committee talked about and thought we should explore. The committee also felt it was important to explore additional capital revenue opportunities, which could include a capital override, a future capital override, and or a future bond election to be able to support some pressing needs in the district. And then finally, supporting extracurricular activities. They felt this was something that differentiated our district and again, in a competitive environment, to make sure that we have the necessary support to be able to leverage that competitive advantage. So in terms of next steps, we do have a board work session scheduled for March 6th. Hopefully that's on your calendar. It's on mine, which is less than a week away at this point in time. And so we hope to talk to the board in more details about next year's budget, what our projections are looking like, those types of things, and hopefully maybe get more feedback from the board about this recommendation or any additional input that the board would like to share about the direction that we should follow as we work towards developing a budget. I mentioned the NST before, the Negotiated Solutions Team. We are continuing to work. The Benefit Committee is close to being able to support a recommendation. The Negotiated Solutions Team is scheduled to meet again on March 13th. We are working through the interests of those in the input that provides in a salary recommendation. That'll be an integral part of what we do for next year's budget development. Of course, we're waiting on legislative action to know exactly how much we have in terms of resources. And then ultimately, this culminates in proposing the budget in June and formally adopting the budget in July. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from the board? Comments? Mrs. Fisher?
I was just looking to see if there's anywhere on the schedule that Mr. Miglerino has to be here for, because you need to go home and rest. Is there anything else on the agenda that we have to have Mr. Miglerino for? You sound so sick.
I
Complimentary.
No, we just love you. We don't want you to,
I
I've
don't
been giving him this speech for 3 weeks, so I can't
So-
slow him down. He's a machine.
Yeah, I don't see anything on the agenda that
Mr.
would-
Miglerino, please go
require-
home and take some NyQuil and sleep and
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fisher.
You are excused if you
Yeah,
need to.
if you're just going
Yeah.
to sit here and cough your germs around the room, please go home. I know she sounded more compassionate and much nicer,
I think Dr.
You can't
Galligan
make him
doesn't want
laugh
to sit
'cause that
next to him
hurts.
anymore.
and thank you for your work on the budget committee. So
Now
we're
go
going to
home.
reward you with the rest of the evening off.
Yeah. We'll set up the tables.
Don't laugh. Don't laugh.
And Dr. Galligan, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did we all say good night? Night.
Good night, Mr. Miglerino. Feel better soon.
Two.
I think he's just
The week
coughing in
of
our
fir-
direction on purpose now. Okay, so that is moving on to item 3D, curriculum instruction and assessment, late start, early release, and I believe that is Dr. Galligan.
It is. President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and guests, many things have changed over time. The way people communicate, the job market, technology integration, and along with those, K-12 public education has changed also dramatically over the last 30 years. These changes can be traced back to an evolving and diverse society and to requirements placed on schools by government, both at the federal and state level. At the federal level, we've lived with No Child Left Behind. We've lived with adequate yearly progress, and that has morphed into Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, which have increased overall accountability and set strict mandates for the performance of all students. In addition to the state level, at the state level, we have the requirements on schools for the alignment of our state standards with our curriculum, assessments, and reporting of student performance, and a focus on continued school improvement processes for our yearly compliance and school accreditation requirements. The bulk of the work associated with the changing educational landscape lands on our teachers. They are the primary drivers of teaching and learning in the classroom, and it has become increasingly difficult for school districts to provide, including ours, sufficient support for teachers within an in-service schedule and staff development model that have remained fairly static over the years. A professional learning community, which is what I'm going to talk with you a little bit about, structure is a more efficient and ongoing method to provide the time to meet external mandates and, more importantly, to focus on improvement of instruction to support the learning of all students. PLCs, as we know, have been commonplace in many Arizona schools over the last 15 years, and research indicates that teacher collaboration is strong. Professional learning communities involves the quality and equity improvement for student learning. It promotes discussion that are grounded in evidence, which evidence-based is part of ESSA also, and analysis rather than opinion, and fosters collective responsibility for student success. This evening, Dr. Smith and I will share information, data, and possible next steps with a late start, early release report to support professional learning communities at each of our campuses. A professional learning community, or PLC, is not just another teacher meeting. First, while collaborative teams are an essential part of the PLC process, the sum is greater than the individual parts. The PLC is about the larger organization and the students it serves. So for each of our campuses, it would be the students within that school. Much of the work requires a school-wide and district-wide effort, similar to the journey we have been on for the past 4 years. Second, the PLC process has an ongoing positive impact on the structure and culture of the schools. I think you could talk to any of our campus administrators and they would tell you this journey has actually been positive. While difficult and complex, it's been positive. Our educators, teachers, and administrators have committed to finding time to meet with peers on a regular basis and are accountable to the team to make instructional changes to improve student learning and achievement, so that the PLC process is much more than just another meeting. We have found that scheduling professional collaboration time during non-contracted hours, which would be before school, after school, or during the summer, means additional costs to the district and stress on our workforce. In addition, some individuals would not be able to participate because of other time and family commitments. By implementing PLCs or collaborative time as a job embedded and ongoing opportunity for teachers, the district can ensure the highest participation in the most cost-effective manner. Although teachers do have planned time, that time is commonly devoted to preparing class activities, lessons, grading, returning phone calls, emails, meeting with students, IEP meetings. The list can go on, and many other tasks associated with just the daily operations of their classroom. The proposed late start, early release structure will provide teachers with sustained and ongoing staff development and collaborative time to focus on improving instruction and increase student learning. The professional learning community is based on a single simple premise. To be effective, teachers must change their focus from how children are taught to what a child is learning, a student is learning. The professional learning community model flows from the assumption that the core mission of our education in Deer Valley is not simply to ensure that our students are taught, but to ensure that they learn. That's been a huge shift in focus over the last few years. This simple shift from a focus on teaching to a focus on learning has profound implications for our schools. We know when a school begins to function as a professional learning community, teachers become aware of the incongruity between their commitments to ensure learning for all students and their lack of a coordinated strategy to respond when some students do not learn or some students have already learned. The education staff addresses this discrepancy by designing strategies to ensure that struggling students receive additional time and support through MTSS and RTI dedicated time, or are allowed to provide enrichment for those who have the potential to move forward, no matter who their teacher is. In addition to being systematic and school-wide, each professional learning community's response to students who experience difficulty should be timely, based on intervention rather than remediation, and directive. Rather than inviting our students to seek additional help, we should be providing it. We have found in our journey with collaborative time or PLCs, educators who are building a professional learning community recognize that they must work together to achieve their collective purpose of learning for all. Therefore, we have tried to create structures to promote collaborative cultures within our campuses, K-6, K-8, middle school, and high school. Our goal in this journey has been a solid belief that the powerful collaboration that characterizes professional learning communities and teachers and educators coming together must be a systematic process so that we are consistently analyzing and improving our classroom practice. As our teachers work in teams, engaging in ongoing cycles of questions that promote deep team learning, this process in turn leads to higher levels of student achievement. As the past years have shown us, ensuring that professional learning communities or time to come together collaboratively can happen consistently and effectively with hard work and time embedded within the day. It requires the school staff to focus on learning again rather than teaching, work collaboratively on matters rather than solely by themselves, and hold themselves accountable for the kind of results that fuel continuous improvement, similar to what we do as a district. As I mentioned before, a PLC is an ongoing process in which educators work collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry and action research to achieve better results for the students they serve. Professional learning communities operate under the assumption that the key to improving learning for students is continuous job-embedded learning for educators. The PLC process is not a program. It cannot be purchased, nor can it be implemented by anyone other than the teaching staff and the grade level teams and the content level teams themselves. Most importantly, it is ongoing, a continuous, never-ending process of conducting schooling that has a profound impact on the structure and culture of our schools and the assumptions and practices of the educators within them. We took a look at many of the districts around our valley on their websites to see what their calendars showed. This slide shows other valley districts who have embraced professional learning time. For these districts, Wednesday appears to be the weekday identified most often. Early releases are generally favored by elementary districts, while late starts are preferred by high school districts. We also noted that Scottsdale and Paradise Valley does not have embedded PLC time. Their learning time is much more in line with our current model of a half-day early release each month. We surveyed stakeholders in December and January for initial feedback for a possible late start or early release to support professional learning time for our educators. With board direction, we will continue the planning process for this proposal, which would include a detailed communication plan. Dr. Smith and I will share the data collected from the stakeholder surveys. And I want to thank Dr. Smith for his work on these surveys and then the analysis of the surveys themselves. Do you want me to take that on? Okay. What you can see here is there is strong support for either a late start or early release structure from both our teachers and our administrators. As would be expected, parents were not quite as enthusiastic. However, we thought that that percentage would be down in the teens or 20s. So we feel that difference between 42% for and 58% not for was better than we anticipated. All three stakeholder groups think early release is a better option. The advantages to an early release would be that educators are already at school and can immediately go into a PLC structure. Parents may find it easier to have an early release than a late start, as indicated by the survey data. And an early release is already part of the DVUSD culture. Advantages of a late start, our high schools would feel the least impact to after-school programs, clubs, athletics with a late start. There would be immediate implementation to apply any learning from a PLC that same day, and there could be less teacher absence for the PLC time that occurs before school than an early release time may have. Wednesday, from our stakeholders, is clearly the preferred day. We did not give an option for Monday or Friday, as these might lead to extended weekends for kids and families. Then our learning ends because they're gone. As noted earlier in the previous slide, 6 of the 8 comparison districts have Wednesday as their PLC day of the week. All 3 groups agree that if you are going to have the professional learning time, make enough time for meaningful learning and collaboration to take place. Our comparison districts range in time from 1 hour up to 3 hours for professional learning time. Based on stakeholder feedback, we feel this information that you see on the slide best reflects the values of those who responded to the surveys. A Wednesday, 90-minute early release. Although, we would say if we could research Mesa's model, who provides a late start for high schools and an early release for elementaries, that would be something we would want to research, simply because we know for our high schools, a late start could possibly be easier for the students who have after-school activities. And we would intend to implement this in the 2019-20 school year. We know that beyond stakeholder input, there are additional considerations we will need to address. The initial considerations can be found on this slide, and they range, as you see, from transportation all the way down to budget impacts. One consideration we will address are the implications for transportation, bus routes, and drivers. We also know that another consideration will be how involved, if at all, our classified employees will be in that PLC time and what that impact that may have. In addition, we will want to provide support to our families who may need childcare on this one day of the week. Our community education department is already researching how we can provide parent support in a fiscally responsible way. We also know that we would need to ensure that any differences that would occur with instructional minutes would need to be addressed. We know that we would be giving up our current early release days that occur monthly, so we would recapture those minutes and then have to take a look at if there are any additional minutes that we would need to support. And just looking at this and maintaining a full day for teacher professional development in February, our initial look showed about a 5.5 minute increase each day. Again, that's just rough and that's preliminary based on what we would hear from our school board. Lastly, once we have researched each of the previous considerations, we will have a better idea of possible budget impact. We took all of the comments from our stakeholder survey, similar to what Jim did in the previous budget report, and dropped them into a Qualtrics word cloud. You can see from the words that are heavily bold that those are the ones that were mentioned most throughout the survey responses from each of our stakeholders. Here are some of the responses we had from our parent surveys. One of our, not shown up here, was a parent who is a teacher, a current teacher in the Washington Elementary School District, and that parent mentioned that they have early release days on Wednesdays as well, and as a teacher feels that it's a good experience and as a parent values it. What you'll see here are some of the responses and comments from our teachers. And from our administrative group, they weighed in also with comments on the survey. These are secondary themes we pulled from the stakeholder surveys. We will address under student secondary themes instructional minutes. So our intent is to ensure that we have the exact same instructional minutes that we currently have. We are researching child care options for parents through our community education program. Ms. Irvin is already on top of that and looking at what they can provide, how licensing would change, and what the budget expenses to that program would be. We do expect our teachers to gain back many of the preps that they may have given toward team meetings or collaboration. That doesn't, of course, their professional duty for IEP meetings would remain. So these are some of the secondary themes that we pulled out as well. We know that there is a strong correlation between learning and sustained employment, and that an openness to learning also brings continuous improvement to life in our schools and within our district. We have also received direction from ESSA on effective professional learning, and that is indicated here. Providing a dedicated time for teachers and educators to meet in a late start or early release will enhance our work in this area and provide us the opportunity to continue to increase student achievement and address student behavior. We would appreciate direction from the board that may provide us at this stage. The question that we would ask is, should we continue building a plan to present to you as a preview item later this spring, or should we end our work at this time? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Galligan. Do we have questions, comments from board members? Ms. Tweedy.
I had a couple questions. Okay, so the district I work in does this, and so one thing, they don't have early release on weeks there's holidays. Is Deer Valley considering that, or are they planning to have early release on holiday? Like if President's Day, they wouldn't have an early release that week.
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, awesome question. I believe we have decided if we were to move forward with this, we would not have an early or late start on conference week in both fall and spring, during April because of AZ Merit and Ames, and then we would definitely look at the weeks that have a holiday built into it. All three of those have been areas that we have identified. We would not want to put that burden on our teachers, our students, or our parents. So thank you very much.
Few more. So the other question I have, and I don't really know the answer to this, any of the districts that have it, can they provide student achievement data to prove or at least give an indication of them? Because ultimately the only reason you would do this is if it impacted student achievement positively. So for example, they might have, I wouldn't think AZ Merit because it's new, it's all over the place, but like reading inventories, most of the districts do some type of Alexile. Did reading levels go up or down? So I would just need information on student achievement. And then I guess a final question. Is there going to be a structure? So, like one district I know of, 1 week is PD at the school, the next week is PLCs, and the next week the teachers get their own time. Are you going to do something similar?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, we've actually not gone down to the weeds to that point, simply because we felt we wanted to have much more direction from you. In initial conversations, I would say when we look at in a month and the number of either early release or late starts, we would want to build a structure that would be replicated each month. And of course, we would hope to have direction from you all, but typically many of the districts that are utilizing PLC time through an early release or a late start has something very similar to what you just described. So that would be something that we would discuss and look at, but we haven't gotten to the weeds, down into that weeds yet.
And then I just would want to know if there is increased work hours for any staff. Are they going to be compensated for their time, whether it be admin or teachers or classified? So if there's any additional hours somebody has to work, it wouldn't be added to their professional responsibility. Would they be compensated? I guess that's my question.
Ms. Frank and Ms. Tweedy, again, we've started to look at the possibility of that. As I mentioned, when we just looked at a rough number of minutes, adding 5.5 minutes to each of the days wouldn't be an hour every day or every week even. But it would be something that, again, through board direction and our work together in cabinet, we would definitely be able to address with you all.
Mrs. Fisher, or I know Phoenix Union was on the list. Would you like to share your district's experience?
Actually, I have questions because we do have PLCs every Wednesday, but we only have one a month that's an actual late start where we have a big PLC district-wide. I, as an administrator, have to attend a PLC every Wednesday, either on campus or one that I'm hosting myself. And I have seen a wide variety of some that are highly beneficial and some that are bring the cookies in your slippers and let's take a nap. I guess I would need to know what true structure are we going to do. The most productive ones that I've attended have not been the late start PLC. They've been the early morning where I go in with the science teachers and they're all sitting together, just science teachers, sharing their strategies, working together, saying, you know, we don't have the correct curriculum for this or that, so what are you doing? Well, I'm doing this, and they're pulling stuff up on the board and showing what they're doing, and they're really truly collaborating. But on the big late start PLC days, I see a lot more of admin involvement and that type of stuff, and I have noticed a lot more admin tend to occupy the time, not necessarily to the benefit to the teacher. And so I don't know that the result is there. So that's just my opinion on that as far as it starts. I do love the once a month late start when I bring my team in, because I have to bring in about 30 people from the campuses. And that's my time. I have no students. I have nobody. I have them in a locked room and they have to listen. And we're able to collaborate. So I do understand the true value of a productive PLC, but I do know this when it starts to, not all groups will take it that seriously. So I would be interested in knowing how are we going to truly make sure we have a solid structure. The second question I have is, and maybe because I'm at an all high school district, is the one thing I wonder is how many, okay, we all have different types of kids. You have the kids who they are at school, they're happy to be at school, they get out of school and they're going to join this team and that team and rah-rah, and they're the kids that we know from whatever, they're they're going to college, they've got it all together. And then we have the kids that will probably go through college, are probably great people, but right now they're kids and they just want to fart off. And so how many of them are we going to have at Walgreens or CVS or wandering a neighborhood or getting into mischief, even if it's not? Have we considered, I mean, we consider daycare for the little ones, but you know, are we going to have an increase in tagged buildings, tagged neighborhoods, an increase in petty theft or, you know, petty just, I mean, kids are kids. They just do, sometimes just do, yeah. How many of them are going to tie their trucks together and start driving opposite directions to see who has the better truck in a mesa? Or, you know, so I'm just wondering if we've considered that type of safety and security for older kids. Because if we're, I guess I would be in support of an early release if we then had, but then you can't increase it because then you can't do the PLC. I don't know, maybe we use the classified staff to have better clubs or something. I don't know. But I think we should consider our older kids as well as the younger.
Thank you.
Mrs. O'Brien?
I am interested in learning more about the Mesa Unified School District program that has the late start for the older students and the early start for the younger ones, right? And then I know Dr. Finch, you have touched us up, spoken a couple of times, not in a lot of detail, about how PLCs seem to be the single biggest game changer in your district. So if you could maybe talk a little bit about the student achievement and how that worked for you and your district there, that would be helpful.
Sure. I think Dr. Galligan mentioned it. Is it Haggerty? Who's the gentleman that is probably the most famous for it? Looking for cause effect or effect size on learning, and PLCs or collaboration was number 1 or top 5.
It's Dr. Hattie.
Dr. Hattie. And so that was probably what started the concept many years ago, this concept of collaboration being the key. Well, it's logical that collaboration is the key. In my job, where I was before, remember I was trying to get 6 districts to do the exact same thing, 6 competitors. So it would be like PV, Dysart, us, all trying to do the same thing on the same day throughout the whole 2-county region. So it took me about 5 years to pull that off. And so it was a monumental move to get 6 districts, 6 superintendents, 6 school boards, 6 unions, all to think in the same direction. As we progressed down the trail, and we didn't get all the districts right away. We had a majority right away, and then the others joined, you know, right as soon as they started to see the impact. So I to this day, it is the single most important initiative, academic initiative that I have ever been involved with in my administrative career, period. We had academic achievement, it impacted that, collaboration, morale, culture, all these things that you want to spend time on, which you don't have, you can solidify and pull your district in a specific direction much easier when it's coordinated. So Ms. Fisher mentioned the quality PLCs versus not. That is a critical piece. If you just say we're going to have 90 minutes and have fun, it will be an utter flop, period. We need structure to it, and again, we're looking for direction from you whether to go down this trail and how far to go. But yes, structure is vital to its success. We need to focus on student learning, data analysis, et cetera, when we provide that time. It has to be structured. So there's an accountability piece to make it valuable as well. So in my administrative career, I can't think of another initiative that moved 2 counties of schools in the same direction at such speed other than this PLC early release concept.
You have another question? Go ahead.
Do we have an idea, or maybe you can provide it later, how many of our schools have already started down this path of PLC and are trying to do it in the given framework that we have?
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, all of our schools have been on this journey. Now, how far they have gone on that journey really depends on the level and configuration. Our K-6 schools and the K-6 part of our K-8 schools have been able to figure it out a little bit better than our middle schools and our high schools, simply because of the configurations and the complexity in schedules. All of our principals have received training, book studies, vocabulary. I think when Dr. Finch said it was a game changer, when I met with high school principals in December and we talked about this possibility, they all said, and they hadn't heard Dr. Finch say that, this would be a game changer for high school, our teachers and our students. I think for our elementary and our middle schools, it too would be a game changer. It's just they have different ways that they can look at their time, which is using teacher prep many times, or teachers who agree to come together before or after school, whereas our middle and high schools, many of them coach and have clubs and provide those types of things that make it very difficult to do those types of things before or after school. We are all down that journey, though.
And Mrs. Ordway.
I would defer to all of your expertise because you have spoken to your campus leaders, so on and so forth, and you have, you've experienced that. So what my concern would be with the late start, early release, whereas I guess high school late start might not impact those that have siblings that would not have someone to come home to, whereas if maybe you looked into the K-8, whether it be the dedicated middle school 7-8, and just look at that so we're not causing kindergartners and first graders to go home by themselves. So it's logistic, not that I want to go into it, but that's the part. You guys have all the academic and education portion of it covered, so that logistic would be something that I'd like to see how we would deal with that, what the impact would be. One more thing is that I did notice that I know that we didn't give Mondays an opportunity, but when you looked at the chart, Paradise Valley and Peoria both picked Mondays, and they're both unified school districts.
Paradise Valley does not.
Or not Paradise Valley,
Okay.
Dysart? Is it Dysart? I'm sorry.
And Peoria. That would be
I was
true.
just wondering if we actually got numbers from them to see, or if it's our community, that Mondays would just be not the right day.
Okay.
So that I'm not pushing for any certain day. I'm just wondering about that. That would be it.
Okay, well, I would certainly, I know when I was a teacher, I would have appreciated having time to collaborate with my team outside of my prep. So I can definitely see the benefit for teams within schools, or, for example, all of the science teachers, as Ms. Fisher mentioned, or departmental throughout the districts or within the regions, having the time to collaborate. I think it would be important that it doesn't turn into another version of what we currently have, where teachers are sitting for 2 hours, through a professional development that's been handed to them from the district office. So I think the structure, again, would be important for me to see. Also, I would need to see the impact to the budget. And I know no one's mentioned this, and so I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and I don't know that there's any way to know this in advance, but if there's a possibility there could be an impact to enrollment. If there might be parents who say, well, if they're going to be early release every week, I'll go over to this charter over here, and then I won't have to worry about childcare. So I don't know if that's been considered or looked at, so I just wanted to throw that out there. So for myself, impact to enrollment, budget, other board members have mentioned safety and security, achievement data, the structure and quality, and then an interest in looking at the MESA model. So I don't know, do you need more direction, or have we given you enough homework?
So, President Frank, I think what we would appreciate is Dr. Smith, Dr. Galligan, Dr. Finch, please continue pulling information together and bring back to us. If that's what you are asking us to do, we will be more than happy to pull that together and come back to you with another report for further direction, or after that go into a preview item. Our goal, though, in our hearts and mind, would be to have a decision prior to the end of this school year, so we could start talking to our communities that it's not next year, and that we would take all of next year for communication and planning and structures and all of that. So that would be our goal, would be to have a decision from our board by the end of this school year.
And then you're, just to make sure I understand, then you're looking at implementing it not the next school year, but the one after that.
2019,
Okay, to give everyone time
2020.
to adjust. So do we have consensus from the board that we would like them to continue researching to bring us information back on professional learning communities?
I want to know more.
Yeah, I think we all ask questions that we want answered, so in order to do that, they'd have to continue down the path.
Okay. Mrs. Fisher?
I'm just going to say at this point, I don't know. Honestly, so if the rest of the board wants you to look up more stuff, go ahead. But I want to know that we're not going to be paying $25,000 for California trips, and we're not going to be, all the things that go along with it. I want to know that if you're going to do it, we're going to look at all real data, not partial data or partial comments. Because it's a major decision to change the lives of not only what's happening here, but all of our community. And when we start looking at the cost, we need to look at the cost of sending people to be trained to do training. And my concern is becoming meetings about meetings to have more meetings for more meetings so that we can have meetings, and in the meantime we're not engaging kids. So I just think there's going to have to be a lot of real data. So I'll defer to the board and let y'all dig up what you will. But I at this time will express I have a lot of concerns about taking this route, because what I have seen has not been positive. And I'll just leave it at that.
Ms. Tweedy, your thoughts?
I mean, I just don't have enough information to say if I think it's, I don't want anyone to feel like they've wasted their time if I don't end up support. But without knowing the answers to my questions, I just, specifically too, I really do want to know how it's impacted student achievement in other districts that have it, and on a measurement that they used prior to implementing this and after, not something that's changing all the time, that you just can't do a comparison.
So what I'm hearing from the board is that board members would like more information, and that some of us have concerns that could only be addressed by receiving that additional information.
Thank you very much. We will do so.
So that brings us to item 3E, again, curriculum instruction and assessment. Deer Valley Academy is the topic, and I believe that is you again, Dr. Galligan.
Yes, it
Unless
is.
you've come down with Mr. Miglerino's cold, you're on the hook.
Well, this definitely is a big night. So here we go. President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and guests. As we look at lost enrollment and ADM, we asked why did we have a charter school housed on one of our high school campuses, utilizing Deer Valley teachers and providing instruction to 86 full-time equivalent DVUSD students. Dr. Finch asked Mrs. Barb Irvin, Mrs. Christy Hirschberg, sitting next to me, and me to develop a plan to recapture students attending Deer Valley Academy and expand options available to all Deer Valley students. This presentation will propose 3 models to address these 2 goals. In looking at this charge as an opportunity to continue to improve learning options for students, we know we want to retain our children in our own courses. We want to increase our course enrollment, and through these models provide social and emotional supports in non-traditional learning environments. So you can see here what our goal is, the actual proposal, and then how we intend to impact students, enrollment, and our environment. We will review 3 learning models this evening. A brick and mortar option, specifically to replace the services Deer Valley Academy provides. A blended learning option that incorporates the best of both online learning and a brick and mortar environment. And third, an expansion of the online learning program DVUSD already has in place, the Deer Valley Online Learning Program. We know we can provide a better product for our students who require afternoon or evening courses. We also know we can work through any challenges posed by funding or tuition. We have had demonstrated success with our blended learning model each summer with our middle school summer school model that utilizes, again, the best of online learning and face-to-face support from teachers. We have surveyed other districts that also have robust online programs to see how they are evolving and growing, and you can see here that many of them have moved to full-time online teachers to enhance their education services.
Good evening, President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and guests. Deer Valley currently provides flexible learning options for students. The goal is to retain and recruit students through additional choice and a menu of options for middle school and high school students. We serve many different types of students across 20 campuses and seek to expand how we serve our students. With the proper staffing in place, we are proposing to offer 6-week sessions in both in-person and blended options. We also are proposing to add social and emotional supports to meet the needs of students in non-traditional learning environments. We have data that tells us that 805 students brought in 1,543 courses from outside online schools and from Deer Valley Academy. This data is from 2015-2016, so it is safe to say that the numbers may be higher this year. The goal is to provide additional flexible learning options to retain students in Deer Valley. We also need to provide our counselors with more in-district learning options for courses so that they can direct students to DVUSD learning models inside. Based on our enrollment data, we intend to increase student enrollment in choice options for Deer Valley High School and Goldwater, which are 2 schools whose students may choose courses and options outside of DVUSD. All right, so the first model is the traditional model. The traditional model meets the needs of a particular type of student who learns better with face-to-face instruction. This model will provide evening and summer sessions in a condensed time frame, although full instructional minutes requirements will be met within the 6-week courses. The traditional model will provide in-person support both in the northern and southern regions to better meet the needs of our families. This model seeks to aid in retaining our students from charters and avoid ADM sharing. Similar to Deer Valley Academy, for math and ELA credit recovery courses only, there would be no tuition fees to the student in a credit recovery course unless the student did not successfully pass that course and needed to take it again. Projected ongoing costs are shown on the slide. A detailed business plan is available upon request. The next is the blended model. The blended model currently exists in DVUSD, but it is very small. The goal is to expand from a small computer lab at Vista Peak School to Goldwater's Library and Boulder Creek's Media Center in order to offer facilitation of blended learning models in the northern and southern regions. The objective is to offer 6-week sessions online with required in-person time each week. The proposed schedule allows a student to choose between Barry Goldwater or Boulder Creek and from 16 hours of teacher-facilitated time between the 2 schools to meet the 4-hour weekly face-to-face requirements of the class. The model is the best of both worlds as it meets the needs of a credit recovery student who needs flexibility, the student who may have a job or other responsibilities, but needs built-in academic support along with the social-emotional support. This model also supports our Get Ahead students and late transfer students, just to mention a few. Providing physical space for our blended learners and a home base for our full-time online teachers and addenda-based teachers will require a startup cost of just under $70,000. I can assure you that the Goldwater location will be a perfect home base for expanded services and is supported by Principal Dr. Anita Stolik. This space is much needed as we are the third largest online program in the state, and we are one of the few districts without a proper physical location for students to utilize. The Goldwater, Boulder Creek, Deer Valley Online program relationship will be the heart of flexible learning options in the district. Expanding blended options provides a foundation for future innovative approaches. Again, a detailed business plan is available upon request. Okay, the third model, the online model is in the 10th year in Deer Valley. This is a vibrant, growing program that provides flexible learning options for students. The majority of our students are typically Get Ahead students, then honors students, and at the bottom, credit recovery students. The majority of our students are seniors from Sandra Day O'Connor, Mountain Ridge, and Boulder Creek. You may not know, but the Deer Valley Online Learning Program is projected to bring in $690,000 in ADM and in tuition just for this school year. Just for reference, if the online program didn't exist in a hypothetical scenario, and the same number of students took their classes outside of the district, that could potentially be a $1.5 million loss of ADM and tuition to our district. To think about it in another way, 27% of our online students are in less than 4 brick and mortar courses, while 73% of our online students are in 4 or more courses. What that means is that for the majority of students taking online courses, the online courses do not contribute to additional ADM. Just as if they were taking 5 or more brick and mortar courses also does not contribute to ADM. It is very important to continue to offer the highest quality program within the district and continue to improve the model. I'm excited to share some ways we can move forward so we remain competitive. As you can imagine, the demand for online and blended learning isn't going away in public school or in college. And again, a detailed business plan is available. The proposal here is to move toward more full-time online teachers, prioritizing math, ELA, social studies, science, art, PE, health, Spanish, and the gifted Walk Up to Math program. Addenda will always be needed as we have specialized classes with specialized credentialing, but there's opportunity to combine addenda and provide wonderful new positions in the district. There are many benefits to moving forward with more full-time online positions. Okay, current successes and future measures. Let me share with you some current examples of online learning successes. We have successfully migrated from our old LMS, our learning management system, it was Blackboard, to Canvas 3 years ago. Canvas is a tool that all teachers and students can use with on-the-go teaching and learning capabilities. Number 2, district-wide, on average, we have 17,000 Canvas daily users, and this is growing. These are mainly high schools, but there is activity on all campuses across the district. Number 3, online learning serves students on about 20 campuses a year, depending on enrollment. This number is expected to grow, especially as we serve more of our middle schools. Number 4, the online learning program has an 82% pass rate, and our goal is to continue to raise that number. Number 5, the blended middle school grade credit recovery program has increased its pass rate to over 90%. This program is dialed in with experienced staff and updated curriculum and has been providing a second chance for middle school students to reassign over the last 6 years. The Walk Up to Math program, which is a gifted program, is for 5th and 6th graders at K-6 schools going online and taking at 7th and 8th grade math that otherwise would not be available. It has really taken off this year. Because of our programming, online learning options enable us to say yes to 66 students this year who are ready to move up in math. Number 7, the online program works with schools when there is a staffing deficit that can be filled in an online or blended approach. And number 8, we are proud to offer accommodations to just under 100 students a year with an IEP or 504. These are just a few examples of our current measures of success. So looking to the future, measures for the flexible learning models include those you see on the slide. Dr. Smith has helped us identify ways to measure each of these 3 models.
We know we can provide better learning in all academic and elective courses for general ed, credit recovery, accelerated, CTE, and the list goes on. We can exceed with these models anything an online or brick and mortar charter can offer. These 3 flexible learning models provide students choice within our system rather than finding choice outside of DVUSD, and ensure that the credits on a DVUSD transcript have true academic meaning for post-secondary schools and business leaders. If we were to conservatively recapture just 20 full-time equivalent student courses of the 86 that are not with us during the first year, we would receive almost $76,000 in ADM. Adding an additional 10 to recapture 30 students the following year in year 2 would be an additional $151,000, almost $152,000. Recapturing 40 or almost half of the full-time equivalent courses in year 3 would bring back $151,000, almost $152,000 in ADM. At the end of 3 years, we would have been able to recapture $341,640 in ADM. And we believe this is conservative as an estimate of the number of students and ADM recapture rate we could have. We know that the student choice that we would be able to offer would draw our students who are now choosing other options. Again, similar to the previous report, we would appreciate any direction the board may provide us in this stage of the process. Should we continue building specific plans around each of the 3 flexible learning models to bring back as a preview item, or should we end our work at this time?
Sorry, my mic was off. Mrs. Ordway.
That's okay. I have many questions. So the academy that is located in Deer Valley High School was located there for a reason. Not that we couldn't at that time, I guess, service those kids. However, I don't know if you've investigated or if you know what the reasons are, but if we're going to want to attract those kids and keep them and make sure that they're moving forward within our system, they would have to have access to those opportunities that you just talked about. So things off the top of my head are paying for credit recovery. Things off the top of my head is how do I get to a brick and mortar school if I don't happen to live in or have a vehicle to get to the brick and mortar campuses that you just talked about. I realize that much of what you're talking about would take place after the regular school day, but I'm thinking about Boulder Creek having no room for anything, so another thing, just to keep in mind, maybe another reason why the library needs to relocate. But anyway, I digress on that. So when we talk about the Primavera, we don't get paid back for it. That's a free platform for students, as is the academy. So whether or not the quality, we want to change that quality of instruction, but if you have to pay for your credit recovery and you can't get to the credit recovery and you don't learn online, you need that brick and mortar experience, I think that we're cutting out more children than inviting back in.
May I address that? President Frank, Ms. Ordway, one of the proposals is that for our brick and mortar that would replace Deer Valley Academy, for English language arts and math credit recovery courses, there would not be a fee charged to the students who would participate, similar to if they were participating at Deer Valley Academy. They would just be in our own brick and mortar, after school, compressed schedule program.
On their home campus.
It would no longer be at Deer Valley High School with Deer Valley Academy. We are proposing that it would be at Barry Goldwater and ancillary to that at Boulder Creek High School, both in the media centers.
Right, but I guess that's one of my concerns is that if you cannot get to either of those campuses and you require for learning the face-to-face brick and mortar experience, if we're not providing them access to the opportunity, they can't take advantage of it. So they will still go somewhere else.
President Frank, Ms. Ordway, what we have reconnoitered from Deer Valley Academy is that a vast number of children actually go there from Boulder Creek High School, mostly for math. So in our estimation, having a location at Barry Goldwater High School is a little more central for students who would be coming from the north and from the west. And that was just one of our considerations in making that decision. But I understand that transportation could very well be a stumbling block for some, although those who already traveled to Deer Valley Academy may have different forms of transportation available to them.
Right, and not, well, to belabor the point, I'll say it again, I just want to make sure that we're not cutting access to the opportunities off, and that whether or not we have so many students going from Boulder Creek, so now they can go to Boulder Creek, but we have Mountain Ridge, we have Deer Valley, and we have O'Connor. And in all of those schools, not everybody can drive or has the access to getting where they're going. And to cut off that access that's there, I just think we have to figure out a way to make sure that these tremendous opportunities that we're offering, our students have the access to them.
President Frank, Ms. Ordway, we will definitely address that.
Mrs. Tweedy? Ms. Tweedy.
I completely agree with everything Ms. Ordway said, and have we considered, I mean, I guess two things. Have we considered offering addendum to teachers at each of the high schools to teach credit recovery after school? And I definitely agree that they need to be free of charge. We're going to end up with a really low graduation rate if we do anything to make it more difficult for people. But I guess more problematic, and I mean, you even indicated math's the most frequently failed class, and I wonder why we're not investing our resources into addressing the issues, why math is the most failed class. I will say, as a math teacher, I think in high school the practice of putting students who failed Algebra 1 into Algebra 2 in December, so then they can flunk Algebra 2 and then have 2 credits, I would like to see us reduce the need for credit recovery. There's no reason to think somebody would be successful in a math class if they failed the prerequisite. And I guess the other concern I have is I was adding up the startup fees, $371,000, $69,000, and then in 3 years, we think we're going to get back $341,000. So if everything goes as planned, we're going to be in the hole $100,000 in 3 years. And that doesn't look like it included the money we're making in rent from Deer Valley Academy. So I just, financially, I think there's a negative impact, at least what I'm seeing. I'd like to request the detailed business plan.
Mrs. Fisher?
Ditto 1, ditto 2. And then if we could also add what makes our online any different than homeschooling by using K-12. Because they're advertising, parents see it. I just think we have to have the credit recovery being meaningful. I don't discuss anything confidential with my family, but when I saw this was coming up on an agenda, I asked my daughter, I said, hey, you had to take one of those classes. What did you think? She goes, we sat there. We didn't learn nothing. I just got a grade and got my diploma for it. I said, yeah, that's why I have to now teach you remedial education. So we now have to make sure that there's something. I agree we have to take it out of someone else's hands, because obviously if that's the way she felt, we had no control over it. And I can attest where I sit there and I look at things that she cannot do, and it specifically is math. I've actually asked Darcy if she would tutor my daughter, and she said, no. So it's that bad. It was that bad. But we have to make sure that the quality's there, but we also have to make sure that the accessibility's there. Now, just to clarify one of the points, you said that they wouldn't have to pay for credit recovery unless it is a repeat of credit recovery. Did I mishear that?
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, you did not. Now, that's not to say this is a proposal that we're proposing to you all. If you were to give us different direction, of course we would do that direction. We just felt that we've given them a free public education with the first course. We're offering them a free credit recovery.
And then they would have to pay.
And then if, after those two opportunities, a third time was needed or necessary, then we felt it would be fair that a fee would be a part of that third
Right.
attempt.
So that's what I'm saying. Credit recovery in general, we're not going to charge them for unless they take the class, fail, take credit recovery, fail, and then we got to do a third. That's at the time. So we're not just jumping off and charging. So I just wanted to make that point that it's not right off the bat. Is there an option to adding the after-school tutoring, maybe to look at that, or after-school, rather than our teachers taking a job doing something that is beneath their education level or whatever, offering them additional time, additional hours, and we pay them to do some tutoring and or makeup. Or I would be interested in options, but I want to make sure that we're firm on our plans.
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, that is definitely something we would be able to look at. We tend to have difficulty asking teachers, even for pay, to do more over and above. But we will definitely, as we generally do, put that forth. One of the cool things that we mentioned here is really building in a social emotional support by bringing in volunteers who would work with our children in specifically the brick and mortar program to provide some of that adult mentoring and support that they may or may not have in their life. So we really want to build that social emotional piece for children who have not found success in a comprehensive large high school in large class sizes with a smaller class size and an adult that takes an interest in them. That's part of the plan as well.
I'm going to jump in here and just say I agree with Mrs. Ordway and Ms. Tweedy, specifically with reference to charging students. And I'd have to say, if somebody has been a student and they've taken a class and failed it, and then they took our credit recovery and failed it, we might want to start asking ourselves before we charge them what we should do differently for that student next time. So I would not support charging students for credit recovery. I have the same concerns with access for students and the accessibility, transportation, and as well, again, with the fees and concerns for what that will do to our graduation rate. In some communities, the parents are able to afford that. In other communities, the parents will not be able to afford that. So we need to be equitable. And then I would also like to see the detailed business plan as well, and have some concerns about the impact to our budget. And I know, Mrs. O'Brien, you haven't had a chance to speak yet, and I'm sure you have some thoughts you'd like to share as well, so thank you for waiting.
I think it might just be easiest to say what they said.
Okay, so what we said times 5?
Yep.
So what Dr. Galligan has asked us initially, is this something that we would like them to continue exploring, or something that we don't feel that we can be supportive of, or as with the previous item, we need more information?
I do think we need to explore it. I prefer that our students be taught by us, and have the supports that are available through Deer Valley Unified School District. So the more we can hold on to those kiddos all the way through graduation, I think the better it is. So I do think we need more information, though.
Okay, Mrs. Ordway.
Well, I would definitely not want to be the school district that voluntarily continues to have a charter school on their campus. When we are one of the best school districts in the state, we should be able to provide that with access to all students. So go down your path, but get that accessibility in.
Okay, Dr. Finch has just informed me that he's been ignored, so he would like an opportunity to speak as well.
I'd like to weigh in on this too. No, yeah, I'm part of the problem. It's when I walked through the door, I couldn't believe what I saw, and so I've been asking questions since the beginning. That's what a new person does, and trying to figure out the history and how we got here. I think there are a couple things come to mind that I'm interested in, and I think that it addresses a lot what you're talking about as well. Access is important. They don't have access here today. We only have one location. It's at Deer Valley High School. So adding a northern campus and a southern helps us there. Maybe to an eventual fruition we could have at all of our high school campuses as it grows. I know online learning is not going away. It's only compounding, as she's told us about the numbers already. So that's the future, and that's a piece of the future. I still believe the face-to-face and the blended model is the most valuable, and the research would support that. Not all kids are built for the straight online model. And again, back to my old shop, Dr. Galligan mentioned a little piece of that that I think was the most successful part in our blended model was the mentoring. We actually had community members come in and they adopted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids that they could handle, and they are the ones that encouraged kids and followed up with them, and that made such a huge difference in those kids' lives to have somebody that cares about them and follows them and makes sure they're doing the work. And just having a mentor combo is a big plus, and she mentioned that at the end. Back to Ms. Tweedy's thought about the high school in general and the math concept and where we're headed. Today, I was involved with math sweeps at the high school level, and we are running around trying to get some initial data on our performance and how it's being translated into the classroom. We know where we're weak from our test scores, and so now we're trying to focus at the high school level, and so that's an initiative. You didn't talk about that at all, but and myself being a math major, I was very curious. And also enjoyed it today walking around with the principal and assistant principal and different other math teachers in the district. I think that is something you maybe want to mention as well, because that is something we need to address. It's not a Deer Valley problem; it's a national problem, and so there's no reason why we can't address it though. So maybe that would be something you could talk about too.
President Frank, board members. We've identified that in our, I would say, 3 of our math courses, Algebra 1, 2, Geometry, and Algebra 3, 4, that for Algebra 1, 2, and Geometry, we are very similar, if not better, than at least 4, and I don't have the data in front of me, but I could get that for you, of our comparable districts. However, we are not quite there in comparison to the 2 that we tend to chase, and that is Scottsdale and Chandler. But we are close in Algebra 1, 2, and Geometry. Algebra 3, 4, we are not at all. When we look across our 5 high schools at their scores across those 3 courses, again, Algebra 3, 4 has the lowest proficiency rate on AZ Merit. So what we've done is pulled a plan together. Courtney Reyes, our high school math specialist, and I met with each of the high school administrators and their leadership teams with a plan, an 18-month plan actually, to impact the scores on the 2019 AZ Merit in all 3 of those courses, end of course assessments. And that would be initially doing math sweeps that Dr. Finch mentioned each semester across all 3 of those courses. However, we would tackle and start with Algebra 3, 4 teachers in a specific model that looks at teacher self-reflection through video conferencing their own, taking videos of themselves, and then working with Courtney, doing peer learning walks where the Algebra 3-4 teachers at each campus have 3 different things that we would be looking at that we've identified through the math sweeps, and that is fidelity to the resource, which is aligned to our state standards, being able to build in student discourse instead of it being a sit and get, and then also looking at questioning strategies so that we're not just asking lower level DOK1 questions, but we're actually building up that idea of questioning for kids and kids asking questioning. That's what we are having our math sweeps identify. The peer learning walks would do the same thing. The videotaping of myself as a math educator would also take a look through a walkthrough tool and a rubric on how I am doing in relationship to where we would want our student learning to be across those 3 areas. And then we've also built in, through choice with our campuses, 3 very different coaching models, whether it's one-on-one coaching, a lesson study, or looking at the pacing. So we know that in some cases, when our math teachers are working their way through the curriculum for the entire year to ensure that standards have been addressed by AZ Merit, that sometimes that pacing can get off base. And so those are some things that we have proposed to our high school principals, and I will say all of them have said yes. We know that our Algebra 3-4 specifically is an area that we need to provide supports. We did provide once upon a time outside support from one of our community colleges for our high school math teachers, but it didn't give us the return that we had hoped for. So we've turned that around, and we are looking internally and how can we as educators in Deer Valley reflect and learn from ourselves and each other, and then with the support of our math specialists. So that is currently in process. And we will start with Algebra 3-4 across all 5 high schools this spring, and will continue up through May of 2019. Each of the schools is identifying for the fall if they will add either their geometry teachers or their Algebra 1-2. For the most cases, it's a split. Some of them we're going to focus then Algebra 3-4 and Algebra 1-2. There are a couple that will do Algebra 3-4 and geometry. And then the last intense focus will be on whatever that 3rd course is. So as I mentioned, this is an 18-month intense support and internal reflection for our math high school courses, which we've not had in the past.
I have a question. Will you be including the special education math classes in that as well?
President Frank, definitely. They are wrapped in with whatever course they may teach or whichever course they teach mostly.
So they're not just going to be off in the
Nope.
sped corner teaching math or not teaching math.
They're a teacher, and they're involved.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, Ms. Tweedy? And then Ms. Fisher, you're next.
Okay, well, to what you were saying, though, I really hope we do something about the fact that we have students that don't have the prerequisite knowledge. And I'll just give you a personal example. I have some students in my class that are 3 years below grade level. Teaching order of operations. Let me teach you the correct order to do all the operations you don't know how to do it. I mean, you know, at some point, the person doesn't have, and my doctorate that I'm working on is actually in cognition and the way the brain processes information. If you don't have the prerequisite knowledge, you can't transfer it from short-term memory to long-term memory or learn, and no amount of self-reflection on the teacher's part is going to change that. It's just not how the brain works. And it's aggravating because I think the problem's obvious in math, and as a math teacher, so I think we create credit recoveries. And I really wish we would stop. But the other thing is it just English and math that's going to be free? What about science, history?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, as I mentioned, we did not flesh deeply. We wanted first to get from our board if you wanted us to move further. That would be our initial conversations were really looking at which of our students go to Deer Valley Academy right now, and the vast majority of them are math and English language arts. So our initial focus would be math and English language arts. That doesn't mean that we couldn't broaden But of course, as we start a new endeavor, we want to make sure that we do it correctly and can expand from that initial math and ELA. However, if you all were to say, go forth and please add science and social studies, of course we would. There would be no doubt because we know there is a need. But the greatest need, based on the data that we've received from courses back from Deer Valley Academy, is for math courses and English language arts.
Mrs. O'Brien or Mrs. Ordway, do you have?
I was just going to,
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms.
Oh.
Fisher wasn't finished. I apologize. Oh.
You're up.
Well, you know, once it gets towards 9 o'clock. Okay,
Yeah.
Mrs. Fisher.
Actually,
please go
mine's real
ahead.
quick because I am watching the clock quickly tick to 9 o'clock. The one thing that we haven't considered, and two things, I agree with the north and the south, two locations. Of course, I think Goldwater is south and really to this direction, where south at Deer Valley would be closer in line to Ridge. But the one thing that nobody's talked about is the logistics and what it means for these high schools. We have not done their boundaries. We have a declining enrollment at one school, and we have over enrollment at other schools. And I above all else, I think we need to ask our administrators at those schools, what does this impact to them? What does it mean to Deer Valley High School to have this removed? And what does it mean to their potential population? And what does it mean to Goldwater's population or Boulder Creek's? The best laid plans at a district office can be the worst nightmare for a campus site. So above all else, before we start looking at anything, I would like to know what that impact is to these campuses. And because we haven't done their boundaries, and we know we have exploding schools, and we have schools, and you know, I would hate to see enrollment drop any more at Deer Valley because we haven't fixed the boundaries or whatever, and then they start losing, and then we take this school out of there, so then they lose those too. So those kids are going to say, well, I'm just going to open and roll over here because, and then what? You know, what is that going to look like? Or we start losing students at Boulder Creek because now you have this here, and you're now bringing a different population because Anthem has a different feel to it. You're bringing a different population into our neighborhood, and we don't like it, so we're going to change. I just think there's a bigger impact specifically to our high school administrators, and I think they need to have a significant say first. Because they know their population, they know their schools. So that's just, I just think we need to consider them.
President Frank, may I address that? We would not
Please do.
bring this to you if we had not had significant conversations with specifically those three administrators, Brooks, Ms. Sutton, and Dr. Stulk. So when if you give us the direction to come back, and I think that's what we've heard, we will ensure that those three administrators, in addition to the other two high school principals, have input to share with you that hopefully will provide the information that you were seeking, Ms. Fisher.
Mrs. Ordway.
I just wanted to additionally add that whatever would be a credit recovery is something that should be offered, period. If we're trying to take the place of the charter school that specifically did credit recovery, we can't start our maiden voyage only selecting 2 classes that you can fail and recover your credit later. So we would have to cover whatever they need to recover. Thank you.
Mrs. O'Brien. Nothing to add? So it sounds as though, and correct me if I'm wrong, the consensus of the board is, again, with the other initiative that was brought forward, is that we would like more information brought back to us, specific to what we asked. Sweetie, Mrs. Fisher, anything to add to that summary? Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Galligan. Okay, so we get a pass on old business because there is no old business, so we will go through that quickly. And that moves us up to consent agenda.
I move that the governing board approve the consent agenda, items A through K, with the removal of item C for separate consideration.
Did we bring that out? I think when we...
No, that's not how we
No, that's
approve
not
the
how we vote.
agenda.
That's not how we approve the agenda.
No. You can't go back if we didn't change the agenda.
Would you like to amend your motion?
I move that the governing board adopt the consent agenda items A through K.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay, there's an error.
Nay.
Nay. So then, guess we would need another motion. Or Ms. O'Brien?
I don't think you can. Once you voted it down, you voted it down. So we've just voted down all student travel, all, that's a.
I just saw it. I can't do anything.
Nobody gets paid this month.
Well, and here's
we don't get do-overs either. So
Right, and
that's on us.
Here's the problem is I'd like to know where in policy we can't, in general, consent agenda is you don't. But is it written in law that if it's in consent agenda, we can't converse about it? And because I think it would have been a simple, this error is there, and I think it was completely a typo. We just correct the typo and then we move forward. But the rigidity of this board causes this type of item. So I would ask that we have a 24 hours from now or whatever phone meeting where we get this one darn section back on and we take care of business to correct a typo.
I would say to that point that while there cannot be discussion on the consent agenda, there would have been no issue with somebody making a motion to a motion to amend and approve it with that correction. So
I didn't know when I tried to remove it to explain it. You didn't explain that, so you left me with no choice but to vote no. So that's what I did.
Yeah, the amended
Okay,
motion was
and it was
required to
going
be-
so well. Not being the final expert on Robert's Rules of Order, Dr. Finch, do you have a suggestion?
Yes, Mrs. O'Brien is correct. Once you give a thumbs down, you don't get to resurrect it. Ms. Fisher is correct that you can meet again. I don't know if this board is authorized for electronic. I don't know if it's in our
Yes,
board
we are.
program. If we are, then we can do it electronic.
Written on here.
That would be my only suggestion, would be to convene another meeting via electronic, phone, telephone, et cetera, where we can all get on the same page.
Is there anything on there that has to be approved before Tuesday when we're going to have our work session?
I believe so.
There is definitely.
Okay. Well, then I guess we can do a phone conference.
Maybe Ms. Taylor can look at each of her calendars tonight and find a time where we can all get you in the room via phone or FaceTime or something and correct it.
In an exact similar situation, we did in the past in another district put together a meeting 24 hours past the agendized time and had a phone,
Yep.
so the entire board can be telephonic.
I've actually done it myself as well. It is pain, but it can
It
be
is.
done. Getting everyone to schedule together is always tough.
So
That's what I
is
would recommend. We would post it as
Yeah,
soon as we leave
24
here,
hours.
and that gives us 24 hours. Obviously, it puts it in the next following day, but
So then we would need to do a telephonic meeting tomorrow, is that?
correct. Or the following day after 24 hours. Yeah, it'd be the day after, actually. Correct. It'd have to
Have
be
to be
Friday.
on Friday.
Yep.
Okay. Apologies to all board members for the inconvenience. Are we all available on Friday?
We can do
It's
that.
telephone, so.
We can
yeah.
do it
Okay.
after.
Okay.
We can compare calendars after.
Well, now that we've woken everybody up, let's move on to action item 6A, employee travel. Ms. Tweedy, can I have a motion?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to improve employee out-of-state travel.
Second.
Any discussion? In the past, we've gone through this by each trip, has been what we have done in the past. Board Docs is not bringing it up for me.
There is one.
So unless I hear otherwise, then we will go through trip by trip.
I don't know if you did students before. I think you did employees before.
Last time we did
Yeah,
it.
we did a whole
We did it
bulk.
as a whole. The last time we did employee travel, we did it all together.
We did. What are the thoughts tonight?
Yeah, we could do it as a bulk, so long as I could just ask one question.
We already have a motion, correct? In a second? Then you can discuss.
Okay, discussion. Mrs. Fisher,
Well, we have this travel D, which is the, why do we have so many people going to this same thing?
I also had that question, as well as, I know you had attached the funding codes, but do we, that's Desert Sky Middle School?
Ms. Crane informed us that they didn't go last year, and so that's why there's more going this year, because of funding last year. According to Ms. Taylor.
And Ms. Taylor, how is that, what fund is that coming from? Title I? Okay.
I was just wondering why so many people were going. That's an answer.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, it passes 5-0. And that is our only action item. So that brings us, Dr. Galligan again, preview, curriculum instruction and assessment, senior year seniors.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and guests. This evening, we bring a preview item for your consideration to phase in a course credit requirement change for the incoming freshman class of 2022. For the past 18-plus years, seniors in DVUSD have not been required to take a full load of courses during their senior year as long as they were on track for graduation. Our high school academic planning guide indicates seniors with sufficient credits to graduate, which would be 16, may enroll in as few classes as needed for graduation. Both Dr. Finch and BGHS principal Dr. Anita Stulk ask the question to us, why? Why do our students have to have so few courses during their senior school year? This is the question we took to our high school administrators at the December Pre-K-12 conference. Each of them discussed the pros and cons of making a change requiring students to take at least 4 courses during their senior year. Although the principals were split initially in their thoughts for this change overall, the benefits appear to outweigh the deficits. The proposal is for a course requirement of 4 courses to be completed during the senior school year in preparation for graduation and college and/or career success. This would be a phased-in change that would begin with the incoming freshman class this next year, who would graduate in the 2021-2022 school year. Generally, when we think about it, we have our students think of their high school career as a kind of 4-year race, although by senior year it probably feels more like a marathon. However, even if it is just a short 10K kind of feeling, we want our students to be prepared for finishing strong in their senior year. As is the case, many races are won at the end with the runner squeezing that last ounce of energy and speed from their body. It is important for us and for our Deer Valley students to show admission folks in colleges, tech schools, and universities that he or she has run a good race and has not eased up the pace during their home stretch, which is their senior year. The effect of the senior year on admission decisions cannot be underestimated, and that was brought up by our administrators. Again, I would like to thank Dr. Smith and his team for the charts that you see. As you can see, over 17%, actually 17.4% of our seniors take less than 4 courses during their senior school year. As a comparison, other grades that have students taking less than 4 courses include only 3 in 9th grade, only 3 in 10th grade, and 14 in 11th grade. So that 17% is a huge chunk. Based on student enrollment, the percentage of seniors not enrolled in 4 courses is shown for each of our high school campuses. Overall, of those students who take less than 4 courses, the majority, 354, take 3 courses, 67 take 2 courses, and 9 only take 1 course. Our discussion regarding the proposal provided compelling reasons to move forward with this change that we're bringing to you. As you can see, there are many valid arguments. However, the ones that seem to resonate most with our high school administrators were the ability to offer courses that may not have been able to make in the past, and equally important, the modeling the importance of education to reach future goals. The reality is that the senior year is not only the hardest, and as I mentioned before, it is also the one where our college admission offices will have the highest expectations. Our colleges can be concerned about students who take easy senior years with only a few core classes and fewer electives. Colleges, of course, want to see academic interest and not abandonment. And again, this was a strong argument, and our counselors would also agree with that. In addition, based on the 4-course minimum, we would recapture approximately $488,735 in ADM in that school year, 2021-22. Based on the number of students, that would be either adding 1 additional course or 2 courses or 3 courses. That would be the amount of ADM we would recapture each year based on our current numbers. There, of course, are some concerns to note. We know that with increased enrollment, we might need additional staffing. There is also the possible impact to students who work. And although students could still be out of school between 11 and 11:30 a.m., any student who may have a morning job might be impacted. To embrace education and learning in all 4 years of high school, we would begin, as I've mentioned, to have students take at least 4 courses in their senior year, regardless of the number of credits they already attained. This proposal provides the impetus for students to follow an interest. Senior year is often the only time in high school that a student can take more than 1 elective. The change would also align our senior practices with similar-sized districts who do require a minimum of 4 courses during the student's senior school year. Because this is a preview item for your review, we will bring this back to you at the March 13th board meeting for action. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Dr. Galligan regarding this item? Comments? Okay. Well, hearing none, then we'll move on to item 7B, which again is Dr. Galligan, AZ Merit Grade Enhancement.
Here we go. As soon as that
You earned your
presentation
salary
comes
tonight,
up.
Dr. Galligan.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and guests. This evening, we will preview a plan to utilize the state assessment AZ Merit, ELA in Math, and AIMS Science to enhance end-of-course grades. As you know, the Arizona State Board of Education adopts assessments to measure the proficiency of students in academic standards identified by Arizona. Each year, students in grades 7 through 12 enrolled in high school courses take AZ Merit and/or AIMS assessments in their end-of-course assessments to show their proficiency in state standards. The DVUSD Grade Enhancement Plan embraces a collective mindset to ensure that students' grades reflect their most current level of proficiency against the state standards. This grade enhancement plan provides incentive for parents who might otherwise be reluctant to have their children take the assessments to ensure that their children attend school on testing days, take the assessments, and actually do their very best on state assessments. Our schools and districts have great incentive to ensure we are guaranteeing curricular pathways to successful student learning, providing the very best instruction and intervention to help students succeed and show their growth from year to year on the state assessment. We also know there are many reasons students may or may not do well on a state assessment. With this plan, we intend to encourage and incentivize students to take notice of their learning and how they show what they know and are able to do on our state assessment. An example of the challenge we have had since 2015, when there was no longer a graduation requirement aligned with the state assessment, can be shown last year with our senior students who could have earned a seal of biliteracy on their transcript and on their diploma, but because they did not do well or take the ELA, AZ Merit seriously, did not get a proficient or highly proficient score and were unable to have that seal of biliteracy. That is just one example that we have faced since our state assessment is no longer tied to graduation. The grade enhancement plan will enable 7th through 12th grade students who earn proficient or highly proficient on an AZ Merit end-of-course assignment, that would be a high school end-of-course assignment, and a meets or exceeds on the Science AIMS assessment to increase their course grade. You can see from the example, students who earn proficient or meets will increase their semester grade by 1 letter grade up to a B. Students who earn highly proficient or exceeds will increase their semester grade by 1 letter grade up to an A. Students can only benefit from this proposal. Their semester grades cannot be lowered. Again, many thanks to Dr. Smith and Ms. Highland for their help here. We asked them if we were to have had this in place last year for our AZ Merit in 2017, what would we have shown? This simulation using last year's AZ Merit end-of-course assessments was used to determine the impact grade enhancement may have for our students. You can see here that the greatest improvement would have been with students earning a C in their course. However, almost 2,600 grades would have improved. This slide shows that there is a fairly even spread across our courses where grade enhancement would have occurred, with a low in ELA 11 up to a high with Algebra 1-2. This slide shows that freshman and sophomore students would have had their grades enhanced to a greater degree than the other grades where high school end-of-course assessments are taken. This slide shows, based on last year's courses, the spread of grade percentage point improvement. Some considerations we have discussed for students can be seen on this slide. We believe we can effectively address each of these through communication and planning. And you can see there's a range. Additionally, considerations for our schools and district to address are shown here. As before, we believe each of these considerations can be addressed through ongoing communication, expectations, and having specific processes in place. These are two policies and a regulation we would make changes to if this grade enhancement plan were approved. We sincerely believe incentivizing proficiency of academic standards on the high school AZ Merit and Ames assessments as outlined in this presentation is aligned with best practices for grading, and that the plan has potential to motivate students to engage in their learning and performance on state assessments, while also improving student outcomes. Our high school and middle school principals wholeheartedly support this plan. The grade enhancement plan before you, with its focus on student achievement and learning, supports DVUSD's mission to provide extraordinary learning and educational opportunities to our learners. You will notice that there are 3 districts who have either moved forward last year or will this year, and there are 2 additional districts who are in the same consideration phase as us. One of our concerns is that as school districts who have been struggling with student motivation, especially for high school, look to determine how can we incentivize and motivate children to show what they know and are able to do on the state assessments that indicate their proficiency on state standards, that more districts will indeed continue to look at this as one of those methods. As I mentioned, this is a preview item, and we will bring it back to you at the March 13th board meeting for action. Thank you.
Discussion or questions for Dr. Galligan? Okay. All right. Have you received any input or opinions from parents? Any thoughts on how their feelings about the grade enhancement?
President Frank, we have not done a survey out to multiple stakeholders. Really, it's just been our educators. So that would be something that we can do between now and March 13th and bring that information back as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we do have some public comments. So we have 3 speakers who filled out cards. If you could please step up to the microphone when I call your name. Derek Wade. Young, is it Covert?
Not here.
She left. Okay. And Scott Brew. Ms. Tweedy, if you will read the admonishment.
The board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing name, address, topic, and hand it to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. If necessary to accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute overall limit, the board president may shorten each speaker's time. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism made by a speaker, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that it be put on a future agenda.
Please state your name for the record.
Yes, good evening. My name is Derek Wade. And I want to thank President Frank and Dr. Finch and the board for indulging me or having this opportunity for me to come and speak to you today. I'm here as a parent of 2 students who attend Deer Valley School District schools. Primarily, I'm here in regards to Mountain Ridge High School. And my subject that I like to initially discuss is safety and such in light of the recent events that we all are aware of. I was pleased to hear Dr. Finch mention that communication is being increased and so on about initiatives on the school campuses as to improvements. And I would just like to ask or iterate a couple ideas that I had in related to that as well. I also had a conversation with Ms. Miranda, the principal of Mountain Ridge High School. In this event, the days that followed the events, I spoke with my son who attends Mountain Ridge High School and asked him, in looking at, I've looked at the events that occurred, and I saw that I felt there were a lot of points of failure that the school and the state at the school level could have done differently or done better to possibly mitigate or even prevent the event that occurred. And so I asked my son, being on campus and being a body there, if he knew of any security areas of lack of security or weak areas that could be improved upon. And he did mention a few, especially at Mountain Ridge. There's I guess a time during the day that students are allowed to leave the campus to attend seminary courses at the nearby church, and then come back through the gates. The campus is gated, I know, but there, I guess, at a certain period of time, the gates are opened and left open during this time, and when he discussed that with me, and also the gates to the senior lots and such are sometimes left open as well. And just knowing that and dropping my son off on Patrick Lane there, that is the back side of the school, prompted me to write a email to Miss Miranda, just asking, obviously probably is aware of these things, but what plans she was doing possibly to make that more secure. And she called me back graciously, and we had a nice conversation, and that even within that week, they had already implemented changes to the protocols for those locations so that students could only enter and exit the campus through one direction through the office area. So I was very pleased to hear that. And so it just was an example of her being able to listen to students' input and family parent input, and making changes at her campus effectively in a short period of time that really would make it a larger impact overall. And so I know my time is probably up. I guess my closing statement would be, because of the past events related to use of fire alarms to lure students into or out of their classrooms, could a protocol be changed to not require that, and have a safety officer identify the threat before an evacuation had to actually occur?
So, yeah, unfortunately, your time is up. If you have other details or detailed information or requests that you would like to email to Dr. Finch as well as the board, we'd be more than happy to look at your thoughts and respond.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Is our other speaker still here? Okay.
Thank you,
State
board
your name
members.
for the
My name is
record.
Scott Brew. I just have a quick question. It's probably been covered, but this is my first meeting. I was just curious. I see police officers at high schools, middle schools. I was just curious why there's no officers at elementary schools. If the answer is cost, I'm curious of the cost per officer.
So typically with public comments, we don't respond to those.
Okay.
You could email your questions.
To the board, or okay.
Yeah.
Or myself, and we can get that information rather than speaking and not knowing the
Gotcha.
exact number you want.
Okay. Thank you.
And thank you.
Yep.
Okay, future meetings, dates of future meetings are posted. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, meeting's adjourned at 9:21. And do we want to convene in there? Okay, so we'll convene our executive session in the executive boardroom. Friday, I'm flexing that day, so I'm